Former President Jacob Zuma is back in court for his corruption trial. He is bringing yet another application to have State Prosecutor Billy Downer removed from the case. Zuma accuses Downer of leaking his confidential medical records to the media, but he recently lost an appeal for a private prosecution against Downer and journalist Karen Morn. Let's go live now to Pietermaritzburg. We find our senior reporter Siphamandla Goge, who's following the story for us. Sipa, what are some of the arguments this time made by President Jacob Zuma's legal team?
Well, I have not picked up anything major and anything new that has been made by the former president's legal team, except that they have rehashed their old arguments that they have made in the past, some of which have led to their previous application being dismissed by a court of law. But this time around, they are stretching it back, arguing that, well, according to them, there is evidence that state lead prosecutor advocate Billy Downer colluded allegedly with journalists, and they are naming a Maiden Garden journalist, Mr. Sam Sol, together with Karen Morn. Recently, they are saying Downer has a habit of leaking former President Jacob Zuma's documents and medical records to some selected members of the media. They are citing those two journalists in this case. However, Advocate Dalimpofu has been arguing and drilling in, basically trying to expose what he calls the unbecoming conduct of state lead prosecutor Advocate Billy Downer. There are 4 points that they are relying on: the issue of integrity, the issue of conduct. Those two are the main ones that appear to dominate for me, because Dalimpofu is bringing in the code of conduct and code of ethics of prosecutors. And he's saying, well, if Mr. Downer allegedly violated these basic principles, how is he going to accord the former president a fair trial? He argues that Mr. Downer has got a vendetta to grind against the former president. He also says Mr. Downer is emotionally invested in this case because in the past, when charges were withdrawn against the former president, he was in tears. So therefore, according to him, that signals the fact that Mr. Downer wants to see the former president convicted at all costs. Let's take a listen to Mr. Mpofu arguing on behalf of the former president.
We just have to show the conduct that we are complaining of and juxtapose that against the expected conduct of a prosecutor. That's really, there's nothing more, nothing less than that. If we say, okay, this happened A, B, C, D, E, and then let's now measure it against the standards. If the standards, if whatever A, B, C, D, E is matches the standard, then we cannot succeed. But if the standards that we are going to take the court through have not been met, then of course the court has no option. So that's the matter is as tight as that.
All right, and Sipa, you know, we're hearing the arguments from the former president. You're saying they're rehashing what they've said before. What has the state said in response? Stalingrad again?
Stalingrad, hopeless situation, hopeless case, a waste of time. They say there are no prospects of success for this matter for the former president, and the courts have adjudicated and decided upon the matter. They are saying they do not understand how the former president can bring this application again, because according to them, they are confident that it will be dismissed. Advocate Butland arguing on behalf of the state, because Mr. Downer cannot argue for himself in this matter. He is conflicted. Advocate Butland are going at lengths to say, well, for the past 20 years, the former president is responsible for the delays in this matter, but the former president's legal team have already dismissed that assertion by the state, you know, and saying, well, the state is responsible for the delays because legal recourse and law allows the former president to appeal any decision that he may not be happy with. And they are going at lengths to quote, Judge Bidkoon at some point, who presided over the matter, who said, if you are not happy with the law, change the law. It's the law that allows any aggrieved party or individual to appeal. But take a listen to Advocate Batlenda arguing on behalf of the state, bringing that Stalingrad approach again and pinning it on the former president.
Therefore, seek an order that Mr. Downer be removed and or recused from conducting my prosecution because he lacks the attributes of impartiality and independence which are necessary for the protection of my fair trial right. He must accordingly be removed as my prosecutor, and the NPA director to assign a new prosecutor who is untainted by the criminal violations set out in this affidavit. it is, in my opinion, also very doubtful whether the current members of the prosecution team who have been inextricably involved in the current legal prosecution would qualify. But that's not an issue which requires the adjudication of this court at the present moment. So we know what's coming. We know what's coming next. If Mr. Downer is removed and is next in charge, the next in line is substituted, there'll be another application to remove that person. And it'll come before your Lordship, and your Lordship will tell that that person too is complicit in these dastardly deeds which Mr. Downer allegedly committed. He's also a criminal, he's also an unethical person, and he must be removed as the prosecutor. So the attack is, he's given notice in that paragraph that if he gets rid of Mr. Downer, he's going to set his sights on the next one in line, and then the next one in line. It's an opportunity for a Stalingrad festival, my lord. It will be a festival of Stalingrad delay.
And Sipa, I'm asking you this question in terms of, it's a clarity-seeking question, right? Judge Piet Koen had to recuse himself. He was the one who mostly sat and presided over this corruption trial before. Had he not made a decision already on the recusal or the application for Billy Downer's recusal, how do we find ourselves here with another judge hearing the same arguments now?
Simply because at the time, Judge Piet Koen, who was the presiding judge, was dealing with the former president's special plea, and then at the time he had to make some comments regarding what the former president was alleging, that he's been treated unfairly, that Mr. Downer is not fit to prosecute him. I'm checking that side because we're expecting the former president to come back or go back inside court. However, we find ourselves here, simply put, because Judge Piet Koen at the time made some comments that he felt may expose him, not to say he was wrong, but he felt that for the interest of the integrity of this trial, he had to move and allow the new judge to take over, because he was very scathing in terms of these delays that we have seen in this matter. And also remember, when he presided over the matter at that time, the former president had not decided to undertake a private prosecution process of Billy Downer and journalist Karen Mon. So when Judge Piet Koen had to recuse himself, the former president said, well, okay, there's a new judge now, let me bring back my application, let me try to convince him to listen to me, because the previous judge is no longer there. Let me have round 2 of this process. But a person who will help me unpack that is Thabani Mfeka, will be talking to us. If you can come this side, Mr. Vega, thank you very much for your time. Let's talk about the background to this case. How do we find ourselves here? Why is the former president bringing this application again for the second time? We know that courts have adjudicated on this matter. Even the Supreme Court of Appeal, as recently as 2 weeks ago, slammed him when it comes to these processes, and particularly his private prosecution of Billy Downer and journalist Karen Mon.
Well, what we see today is that the representatives of former President Jacob Zuma have crafted the application that we see in court today differently. You'd remember that in the first time we had a special plea, which was in terms of Section 1061H of the Criminal Procedure Act. But if now they've come up with, there's a new application which is now based on Section 34, Section 35, and Section 179(4) of the Constitution. And the question really is today whether or not the accused, Mr. Zuma, will be afforded a fair trial, given that the lead prosecutor, Mr. Billy Downer, is currently facing criminal prosecution by them.
What do you make of their application, or rather of their arguments and submissions, though, if you take into account what Dalimpofu is saying on the issue of conduct in particular? It appears as if they are targeting and attacking the conduct and integrity of Billy Downer. Do you think they've got something there?
Well, they might very well have something there, because the question really on that score is whether or not, given the history of this matter, it can be said that the lead prosecutor, Mr. Billy Downer, is going to be able to act impassionately. That is to say, he's going to be able to act rationally and without having any partiality. He's going to act impartially in the matter. And one begs the question, the question that one can ask, rather, is when the accused or when the prosecutor has been made to sit on the dock and be an accused in a private prosecution, can he really be able to then come back and be the prosecutor of the same accused who was the prosecutor in the other case? So that is really the question that they seek to have the judge answer insofar as this application is concerned, and that is really what could very well be the deciding factor in this matter.
The state and prosecutions, they're saying, well, this is another rehashing of previously held arguments or previously had arguments. They are also arguing that this is part of what they call Stalingrad festivals. We are back to that argument about Stalingrad, both parties blaming each other. It's not going to end.
It's not going to end. What bolsters their argument is, in fact, that various courts have decided that it is indeed Stalingrad. Various courts being the SCA, the full court.
If you can please come this side, we see the former president there. I want my colleague Bongam Kize to show our viewers, sorry about that, to show our viewers the former president going back inside court as we expect proceedings to resume any minute from now. But let's continue with this conversation while the former president is going back inside court. Please continue and finish the point that we're making about the Stalingrad approach.
Yes, you'd remember that the SCA has made its finding and said that it was indeed Stalingrad. The full court has also made its decision saying that it was Stalingrad. So basically what the argument has been for the state is that the courts have decided upon this, and it cannot be in fact debated whether or not this is Stalingrad or not. But what the argument is being made in respect of Mr. Zuma is that in fact if you look at the situation, both parties are to blame for the delay, in that both parties have had several applications that they have brought which have then made the delay in the matter as it is now.
We will reflect on this later on, but let's talk about the issue of costs that usually we do not touch, and I'm sure this case will go down in history as one of those cases that would have generated a lot of money for the lawyers. You see senior counsels, there are their legal gurus. How expensive is this entire case? Not to say we are judging it on the basis of costs.
Well, I was reading the SCA judgment that spoke to some of the matters that have proceeded, which are being brought by the former president, and they go within the hundreds the thousands of millions rather to speak, because it's so expensive to bring high-profile senior counsels into a matter. So one can only assume that given the nature of this matter, given the complexity of it, and given the length of it, a number of millions have been spent in this matter, so to speak.
And more will be spent moving forward. Thank you very much for your time, Baba. That is Thabani Mfeka, who's been reflecting on what has transpired in court so far. We expect that proceedings will resume. Judge Chili is known for being on time, so therefore we expect that any minute from now proceedings are already underway inside court.
Indeed, they are, Siphamandla. In fact, we're showing those proceedings live there in the High Court in Pietermaritzburg. Judge Chili really was on time, and at the moment, the legal team for President Jacob Zuma, led by Advocate Dalimpofu, is currently speaking. I guess they are responding to what the state has said so far. And as you heard from Siphamandla and his law expert guests there, all the courts are agreeing to former President Jacob Zuma using the Stalingrad approach when it comes to this particular case. So we'll obviously get an update throughout the course of the day here on eNCA from Siphamandla Goge.